Do we have to recording it? Do I need to record the meeting, or you all said recording on your end? Okay.
All right, I'm going to start.
Okay, I'm gonna push record now. You all set?
Okay. This is the September 9, 2020 meeting of the Human Rights Commission. This meeting will come to order. Are we waiting for you, Jen? If Pramod is recording, can I just start with like the reading?
I have stopped it. I have paused the recording.
Okay. I'm a little nervous about time. Pramod, can you mute the people that are calling in? Oh, they're gone. Jen, are we good? Great. All right. This is the September 9, 2020 meeting of the Human Rights Commission of West Hartford. The meeting will come to order. This is Sara Raskin. I'm the co-chair of the West Hartford Human Rights Commission, and I'd like to welcome you to this virtual September 9th meeting of the Commission. Because in-person attendance at public meetings is likely to increase the risk of transmission of COVID-19, this meeting is being conducted in accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Order number 7B, which permits municipalities to conduct meetings virtually. Commission members and some town staff are participating by WebEx. Members of the public can access this meeting by calling 1-408-418-9388 and use access code 173-937-4105. The public can also watch us on Comcast Channel 96 or Frontier TV Channel 6099 or www.whctv.org. Because of the virtual format, there are some special rules and procedures that I need to cover before we begin. First, I ask all participants to please mute your devices when you are not speaking. If you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand and we will call on you. If you are participating via audio only, or I do not call on you and the debate is ending, please feel free to then unmute your phone and let me know so I can recognize you. Second, pursuant to Executive Order 7B, all speakers must state their name and title each time they speak. Third, because of the difficulty in tallying voice votes on a video conference, I will require that all votes be taken via roll. All right, is that everybody good? This is Sara Raskin, co-chair. Okay, excellent. So we're welcoming tonight a new member for us, which is Rabbi Michael Pincus. So I just want to officially welcome you and say hello and thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to begin with the more general aspect of our agenda because we do have a guest joining us tonight. Chief Riddick will be joining us at 5:30. but we wanted to leave a little bit of time before he joins us in order to cover some other information on our agenda. In the interest of time, I think I'd like to skip through some of the agenda items and get to two items that I think need to be decided quickly. The first one is what and how and whether we want to do a celebration of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights this year. As many of you know, but some of you might not, for the past 3 or 4 years, we've had a large event in West Hartford Town Hall in which we've brought together a number of speakers and musicians and poets and artists and organizations around town whose work intersects with the theme of human rights. Clearly, we're not going to have a large in-person event this year, so I don't know if people think it makes sense to cancel, to postpone, or to plan a virtual event. But I thought if we were going to do something around December 10th, that we needed to start deciding what that was going to look like tonight.
Hi, Barry Walters, co-chair. I actually would be in favor of doing a virtual event. It doesn't have to be as involved as we've done in the past, but as I've learned through a couple experiences, it's not too terribly difficult to try to put together a few speakers and even if we wanted to have the chorus return, actually there was several choruses. They could record as well, and we could certainly put something together that would be kind of nice. And we could either make it shorter and more succinct, or we could actually even make it bigger if we wanted to. It just depended on how much time and effort and what resources we have to do it.
Sorry, this is Sara, co-chair. Sorry to interrupt. Do we have somebody that's able to take minutes? Because I see that our secretary is not here, which is another order of business we might consider, which is appointing a different secretary. But do we have anybody on tonight that is able to take minutes for us? Adrian, are you volunteering? Thank you very much. So Adrian will take minutes for us tonight, and I would like to recommend that when we're done with the conversation about the celebration of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that we discuss whether or not we want to appoint a new secretary. All right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the conversation. Thank you, Barry. Go ahead.
Barry Walters, co-chair. Actually, that was pretty much all I had to say on it, and I open it to further discussion.
Go ahead, Don.
I'm Don Ennis. I'm a journalist and member of the commission and single mom in West Hartford. I thought the length last year was arduous, and I think that was because of our performances. And if we were to record performances, as Barry suggested, I think that would really help with the online version of this. I also think that it would be great to have maybe instead of having each individual person do a presentation, maybe we have people in groups where they, a group of people get together and say the portions that we want to repeat. I just think that the more we have in terms of keeping it going, keeping it under an hour even, would be best. It was, about 90 minutes last time?
Sarah asking, co-chair, it was an hour and 15 last time, but it started 15 minutes late.
That's
right. Late because of our first speaker, and then it went for an hour and 15. And I do think, I've seen a couple of formats of this, and one of them is right to have pre-recorded things that you can pick and choose what you watch and what order you watch them in, and that might be a nice way to do it. Krishna.
My name is Krishna Adhikari, member of the commission. I agree with Barry that it's better to organize even whatever we can do the program, and the Human Rights Commission, we always celebrate this program in the past. So this year we can celebrate whatever model we select. I agree to go and apply. At least we conduct the program. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm hearing that people, this is Sara asking co-chair, that people are interested. Adrian or Rabbi Pincus, any, or promote, any thoughts you want to add? We can,
Sure. I mean, this is Pramod Pradhan and the administrative liaison for the Human Rights Commission. So, I agree with the whole group that we should definitely do the celebration. I think the best way to do it is do virtual, and also getting the recording from the performers. I think we can definitely put that in there, and also, I mean, one of the things that on a live performance is also a setup and all those kind of things that we don't have to worry about. So time wise, it'll be good. And also, it was really good to hear the speakers. It was so encouraging and refreshing to hear those people. So definitely, if we don't do that, we're going to miss the whole, thing. So I think we should definitely do it.
Hi, Adrian Billings-Smith here. So what I have kind of heard is everyone kind of wants pre-recorded performances and then live speakers, or everyone to be pre-recorded. Sara mentioned a different format where you could have it all pre-recorded and people can pick and choose what they want to see. But is that what everyone's kind of saying right now? Is they would like pre-recorded performances and then live speakers? Because either way, it would be fine with me. I kind of like what Sara said also, if everything's pre-recorded, because you can kind of pick and choose and you can go back and listen and not miss anything also. And it can stay on for a longer period of time because we can put it on and we can have a start at December 10th and have it on for a few days where people can go back to it. So.
Sara asking co-chair, the only question I have then is the reading of the declaration. And I feel like that has to be, well, it doesn't have to be live. We could pre-record each person reading their part and then string them together. But in some ways, maybe it's nicer to do that part and have a reason for people to come together. I could go either way.
Barry Walters, co-chair, commission. My experience with Pride was that the pre-recorded sessions worked the best. There were a couple things that we tried to do live, and they worked out okay. There was more logistics around them. There's making sure that the mics were close enough, or that there was always some issue that we had to overcome at the very beginning to make it work. So if we are looking for simplicity and ease, then I would suggest a pre-recorded for everything, speakers, any entertainment. I would strongly suggest that. It also comes in handy if something doesn't work out. If it's a live situation, you're stuck scrambling. If it's a pre-recorded, you just put something else in there. It's not going to be a big deal. And I almost wonder too if we would be able to employ our friends with WHCI to help us with some of that. So that's something that we could ask for as well.
One question is where we would host it. So I guess we'd have to ask the town if we could put it on the town website.
Adrian Billings-Smith here. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Barry, with the entire thing being pre-recorded. And if WHCI could help with the recordings and we can kind of orchestrate something for us to be socially distant and kind of read it together, maybe at the crosswalk area, so that we're all there together, masked up and everything. And then, yeah, I would suggest getting in touch with the town so we can go to the town website and get it on there, and then we can obviously put it through other our Facebook and other social media outlets.
All right, good. This is Sara Roskin, co-chair. I think we have a plan. And so maybe what we can start doing is circulating ideas of, I'll start a Google Doc and we can start circulating ideas of speakers and performers. I'll put up what we did the last couple of years so we don't repeat. And that's great. If there's nothing else on that, one of the other items that's coming up is the Park Road Parade that was supposed to be October 3rd. I'm assuming it's canceled. If it's not canceled and they're doing something else, I assume we'll do whatever they're doing. I don't know.
Barry Walters, co-chair. We don't know what we don't know here, so we can't. I don't think we can commit to anything there. We'll just have to deal with it if it arises. I doubt very seriously that there will be a parade, and I don't know if what that would look like, a virtual parade perhaps, but it's been done. But I think we can't. I think we just have to wait and see what they're going to do.
Hey, Adrian Billing-Smith here. Do we have a contact at the parade who would kind of be able to give us that information in the next week?
Yes, Sarah asking co-chair. Yeah, I could, or Pramod or Krishna probably have contact because they're often involved in.
Yes, I mean, so far as I know, I don't think it's happening, but definitely we can contact. I mean, there's a Park Road Parade, the Park Road Business Association, which is involved on that, and I can find it out. So I will let you know by next week. Okay, I'll write it down so I can follow that up.
Sarah asking co-chair, thank you so much. So then we only have a couple of minutes before the chief is supposed to join us. The last thing that's kind of a upcoming date is the town MLK celebration. Again, I don't know what's happening with that. We typically have had a liaison to that, but that person isn't with us anymore. And so I'm just wondering quickly if someone from this group would like to be the liaison from this group to the MLK Planning Commission. Anyone's interested?
If you have the Adrian Billing-Smith here, if you have the information, then I can contact them. I haven't been involved in it, but if you have the information to pass along to me, then I'll definitely contact them and get back to you guys.
Sarah Raskin, co-chair. Thank you, Adrian. It looks like we might be ready to go with Chief Riddick. I think that we've sent to everybody the questions. Again, thank you, Adrian, for collating them. And I think we're just doing them in order. Is that correct?
Sounds good, because you should go first.
Okay. Let me pull them up. All right, so I'm very, very pleased and honored to be able to welcome to our meeting tonight Police Chief Riddick, the West Hartford Chief of Police. And we do have prepared, I'm sorry, there's lawn mowing going on. We do have prepared quite a few questions, but I didn't know if the chief wanted to just say a couple of words before we get started.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. If you can give me a thumbs up to make sure that you're hearing me okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Look at that compliance too. Love it. I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here. I know we had some difficulty setting this up, but we're here now. We're open and transparent, and I hope I'm able to answer all of the questions that you have. And if we can't get through everything this evening, a simple phone call, we'll set something else up to follow up. So thank you.
Thank you again, and we do appreciate it. I think we know the route to connect with you now. And we certainly appreciate you taking the time at this moment in which I'm sure you're going to a lot of meetings and answering a lot of questions. So again, we're grateful. I'm slated to go first to ask you some questions. Again, this is Sara. I'm co-chair of the Human Rights Commission. With the newly passed statewide police accountability bill, can you tell us some of the protocols that you're able to immediately implement, and tell us what the department's timeline is on implementation of some of the other sections that have been added to the bill? I have some follow-up questions, but I'll start with that.
Okay, first, let's just deal with the bill. And and for the benefit, and please, if I'm giving you information you're already aware of, I apologize. But effective its passage on July 31st, several parts of this bill already were in place. So already behind the eight ball. When I say we, it's law enforcement in general. As you know, there was not a lot of conversation and dialogue prior to the implementation of the bill. So I'll just run through a couple of things really quickly because I know we don't have a lot of time. The Police Officer Standards and Training Council was effective on July 31st. Drug testing effective on July 31st. Implicit bias training effective on July 31st. Again, effective the implicit bias training, we're already doing that. Crowd management training and statewide policy effective July 31st. That's a post requirement. So post has to provide us with that information for the statewide policy. Reporting on recruiting, retaining, and promoting minority officers effective on July 31st. And I'll just save you the time while going through these things. So you mentioned a timeline. Our timeline is as we go forward and make changes and adjustments, we shall. We don't have a target, and you're probably saying, well, Chief, what kind of leader are you not to have a target? Well, let's understand what's going on right now. The conversation we've been having with our legislators is that some of these things may change. There might be some timelines that are going to change, and I'm almost 100% certain that some of the language that's currently constructed and contained within the bill will be changed. We're at the table for some of these conversations, so it's not prudent for us to go forward with some of these things until we get more guidance coming from the legislature based upon our conversations.
Thank you. And will all the policies, like what the implicit bias training is, and those things be made available to the public? Will they be put on the webpage if they aren't already?
Yeah, the implicit bias policy is on our website already.
Great, thank you. In regards to Section 17 of the bill, the Police Civilian Review Board, do you have a timeline with the town to create such a board? I know that in past meetings you've said you're reviewing examples from other jurisdictions, and so we're just wondering if you can explain possible plans that you might have narrowed it down to. Sort of what will the makeup be? Will you be involving other local commissions and leadership, such as the Human Rights Commission? I guess I'm going to break there.
Okay, first, we already have a civilian review board and it has been in place for a number of years. So my comments that you heard were probably the reconstruction and the review of the civilian review board. The current construction is very law enforcement heavy. I believe it's 5 or 6 police personnel, and there are only 2 actual true civilians from the public, as well as a person from Corporation Counsel. So what we're doing is changing the construction, and we also are having continual dialogue with the town manager and the mayor and other town leadership regarding whether or not going forward we'll continue as a review board or as an investigative board. My recommendation, which is agreed with the town manager and the mayor, is that we should be reviewing and going forward with more of a review board as opposed to an investigatory board. Many more resources are involved with an investigatory board, skill set, finances, and everything else. And the pluses with the review board is if you're not satisfied or the board's not satisfied with the investigation, they can ask questions. They can provide suggestions. Now, admittedly, they're not binding, but it does bring access and accountability, I believe, to the process. And I hope that clearly answers your question. I can take any follow-ups.
So you didn't quite answer my question. So yeah, so the board now is kind of a weirdly named civilian review board because so many officers are on it. So my question was, are you planning to restructure that? It sounds like you're saying, yes, you want to have more civilians on it. If that's true, how will that composition be made up? Will you be talking to bodies like ours? Will you be talking to other members of the town? We're just trying to get a sense of, I know there's lots of models out there and you probably haven't narrowed down to one yet, but we just want to get a sense of what the process that you were thinking it might look like.
Yeah, well, we're very close, and I apologize. I did think that I was answering it, but I've been known to mumble, so my apologies. The air is thin where I stand. Yes, we have some models. We have a draft. It's not 100% full, and with consultation with the mayor and the town manager, we plan on rolling it out at the next Public Safety Committee meeting. We're still trying to flesh out some details, so we've done a lot of legwork. Assistant Chief Larry Terra, who's sitting to my left, your right, went through dozens of different policies and at least 24, and gave us some good examples and some good templates and some models to choose from. So we're in a good place, and we'll continue to go forward. So I do not anticipate this going any further, at least on our end, past October. But understand, there's also discussions that were had last week regarding the charter provision, and it's the leadership's position that this should be part of the town charter. So that's going to take some time.
So I'm not going to belabor this, but how do you envision, or maybe you don't know this yet, but how would you envision who serves on this board and how those people get appointed, I guess is what I'm really trying to ask.
I don't have an answer to that. I think that's a group discussion that we're currently having. It would be a composition of civilian and law enforcement. The number of law enforcement right now would be at minimum 2. I think we discussed that in the past. It will definitely not be, as a currently constructed, 5 or 6. No, it's too heavy. So we'll be down to at least 2, and how those other seats are going to be filled and vacancies, how that's going to be filled. That's all some of the stuff we have to flesh out. And terms of service, terms for removal from the board, or things we have to flesh out in the next couple coming weeks. But we're very, very close.
Sorry, Sarah Roskin, co-chair. Thank you very much. I'm going to let the next person take the next questions.
Hi, Chief Riddick. My name is Adrian Billings-Smith. I really appreciate you being here today. We know how important your position is and what you're trying to do to ensure that our community is safe. I have a couple questions. I've noticed on the website that we definitely have the 5 policies on the website. Will more policies be added? In an earlier meeting, it was stated that you were going to develop reports with use of force data and performance measures, and it was supposed to roll out on August 5th. Has that date been met? Is that available online at this time?
As we all can remember, August 5th was the day of the storm. And as a result of that storm, the meeting was canceled. We did have that information ready and available last week during the public safety meeting, but a lot of information was given out, and the meeting went very, very long. And a decision was made not to reveal that information and provide it until the next public safety meeting. So I will adhere to that recommendation, and the report is ready to go, and we'll have that and produce it at the next public safety meeting. And the first part of your question, can you repeat that again, please?
Are there other policies and procedures that you'll be placing on the website, or is that within the August 5th data that you'll be providing?
The August 5th data was something separate regarding use of force. And there is our plan that to put as many policies and procedures online as possible, as long as they don't provide or give any information on tactics and some other things we have to be concerned with safety. Whether or not we plan on getting a LGBTQ policy up on there soon, our pursuit policy will be up there, and anything else going forward. So that should be done in at least another couple of weeks for some of those. And by the end of the year, we hope to have several additional policies on there. Again, we plan on putting everything we possibly can on there. It does not give any tactics or any security issues.
Thank you.
Sarah asking co-chair. Adrian, are you turning back over?
Yeah, I'm going to turn it back over to you about the wellness check. That next question. Yeah.
So, Chief, it sounds like there are policies that are going to be loaded up to the webpage, and if these will be covered in those, then feel free to just say that. But I just had particular questions about certain times in which police become the first responders, like wellness checks, people in mental health crisis, domestic violence calls, when there are tenant disputes, etc. And other towns and officials in other cities have responded by talking about whether those are the most appropriate uses for armed police officers. And I was just wondering if you wanted to say anything about the West Hartford police policies towards these kinds of incidents, and whether you think that there might be a way to scale back, whether you think that it's a possibility or it would be a good thing to scale back, or just sort of what your thoughts are around things like wellness checks and mental health crises.
Yes, we've been pretty consistent with this conversation over the last couple of months. I'm on the record stating that I believe that a lot of these services should not be provided primarily by the police department. We should be in a support function for that. The examples I've given previously have been the homelessness, mental health issues. That's not what we're trained for. And I think it's a better option for social services, whether it's a state or local level, to deal with those things, the doctors, the social workers, and the like. And we can support them because these things can turn violent from time to time, but we definitely should not be the primary with that.
Thank you. I know I've heard you say that before, and I appreciate you saying that again in this forum. So is it something that currently now the police are responding to, and that would mean a change, or are you currently not using police for that?
We are responding. There's two things. One, we've had a great relationship with our social services, so we've been responding, unfortunately, most of the time primarily with the PD, but we work with social services with follow-ups, providing mental health care and assistance, regular health care assistance, and then obviously food and shelter assistance that the town provides. So we have a good relationship. And again, West Hartford's been doing this for quite some time, and the law actually requires that a study be done by each town regarding this, but we're ahead of the curve on this already.
Sarah asking co-chair, thank you so much. And you know, as you move forward with these kind of policies, obviously, feel free to call on this body for support of any kind that we can give you. All right, I think I'm turning it back over to Adrian.
Hi, this is a question from one of our members. Some national leaders have speculated that officers in other cities are responding to the anger directed at them by scaling back their response and commitment to their communities. Could you speak to the potential for that kind of reaction here in West Hartford? What are the steps you would take should that happen?
All right, your question is posed, what would we do? And I will provide you what we already have done and will continue to do. First, for me to deny that could not be a possibility, I think is short-sighted and foolish, and also not take into account human nature. In anticipation of some people, whether subconsciously or consciously acting or reacting in that manner, I personally, as well as the command staff and training personnel, have gone to roll calls and reminded people, why did you sign up for this job? What is your purpose? No matter how bad it got, we could not have predicted COVID-19. We could not have predicted what has occurred this summer with the protest and the backlash that has occurred. A lot of things we could not have predicted, but the one thing we can predict is that oath that you put your right hand up to serve and protect no matter what. And that's what I reminded our personnel to do, and that's what our command staff and our supervisors reminded our personnel. That's your obligation, no matter what the police accountability bill may say, your disagreement with that, we have a job to do. Now, it is my job and the leadership team's job to get out there and have these conversations and dialogue with the members of the legislature, the members of the local government, and work together collaboratively towards massaging some of this language, changing some of this language, and getting a working document that we feel better suits our needs and our ability to provide service to the public.
Thank you for that response. It's nice to hear you not only backing your officers, but making sure that they understand that this isn't an us versus them situation. This is a situation that there's an oath that was taken, and it's their duty to serve and protect. So I appreciate you and your language there. My next question would be in regards to the hiring. I heard you say earlier in the accountability bill that it went into effect July 5th about minority hiring. Have you thought about recruiting individuals who are majoring in social work or mental health programs? Is that something that we do? Have you tried to have these discussions, or do you know statewide if departments have had to try to have the discussions with universities to almost create like a dual major in criminal justice and social work that you guys could directly hire from? As you said, it's not what you were trained to do, and you guys should act as support services. So I was just wondering what other creative new ways you guys are trying to recruit individuals to be in our police department, and specifically minorities, women, and people of color. What are your thoughts on that, and what have you discussed with your leadership in order to recruit more?
All right, you pose an interesting question, and I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I think people who want to do social work don't want to be police officers. And I think people who get into the mental health field want to deal with mental health and not become police officers. Conversely, I don't think police officers primarily want to be social workers or mental health officials. And I think that meshing that has occurred over the years, that evolution that has occurred over the year, that change that has occurred over the years has pretty much got us to where we're at right now, where we are really getting out of what we're here for. To your other point regarding different majors, to West Hartford's credit, and this predates yours truly, they had the College Academy that's been in place for several years that people of different majors can come, learn about law enforcement, understand what it entails, ask some hard questions, get to behind the scenes nitty gritty, do ride-alongs and the like. So it might spark an interest in people to take in this profession. And to further your point with now, I'm going to backtrack on myself so you can say, hey, Chief, you're double talking. No, I'm not. My preferences, I know a lot of people, a lot of youth like to go and get a degree in criminal justice. I like people that have a diverse background. I think it's my degree's in political science. What's your degree in? Geography, one criminal justice. What was your undergrad in? In business. So that gets you an eclectic mix of people, different perspectives, different understandings, different philosophies, which I think help make a better management team, a better police department, that we can tackle the societal issues that are out there. So I somewhat double talk, but I think what I said makes sense.
I get it. So since you don't think they necessarily mix, they're kind of oil and water trying to achieve the same goal to make sure that everyone's safe in whatever capacity, what is your plan to strengthen those partnerships with mental health therapists and with the police department? What would be your program created, or riding along with one another? What would be your next steps in creating that relationship?
Well, we'll go back to what we already have done. Many years ago, we had DCF embedded in the police department. Most recently, we did that again several months ago. Unfortunately, as a result of COVID, we had to, stop that program. And we still deal with mobile crisis program that's out there we can utilize to assist. But I just want to make sure we're clear. We're separate, and I think there's separate functions there. And I want to, I don't think we have a partnership, but a partnership means knowing your lane. And our lane is when it gets to that point that we contact them, and if they need our assistance, they contact us. And we have to be jack of all trades. And I think once we try to become masters of some of these, I think that's when we have problems. We need to stay in our function, let the professionals who've gone to school, who've gone to training, who've done the internships, do what they're trained to do and what they're good at.
Thank you, Sarah or Barry, if you guys.
I will go ahead here, Sarah, if you don't mind. Barry Walters, co-chair, Human Rights Commission. Good evening, Chief Riddick, and thank you for joining us. And there was actually a little segue in there when you mentioned schools for our next question. And it's regarding SROs and armed officers on school campuses. What is your personal and professional take on this conversation? And I know it's come up a couple times. You stated in a speech that you have anxiety as a Black man being pulled over. How do you think Black and brown students feel in their learning environment, despite the relationship that they might have with their SRO, seeing an armed officer? And do you think it's beneficial to their mental health and ability to learn, or do you recognize the potential for them to subconsciously and perhaps consciously be presented with symptoms of anxiety, fear, and other feelings that might be interfering with the learning process? And, you know, that's a lot that I just said there. You know, what conversations have you had with students or parents of color regarding this?
Okay.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so here's what we're going to do with your permission. It's a lot to unpack. So if you don't mind, let's just take it question by question. And if you can read off, and then I'll go forward and answer them after each question. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly understandable. So in regards to the national discussion that's going on regarding SROs and so school resource officers and armed officers on school campuses, what is your personal and professional take on that conversation?
Okay, as a Human Rights Commission, am I supposed to give my personal opinion? Just asking. That's a joke. I know I'm not laughing because I have a gap and I try to hide my gap. So work with me, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Dawn, that's you too. So my personal and professional opinion in this particular situation mesh together. I think SROs are a vital component of law enforcement and a vital component of the educational process too. And I speak from this not just being the chief of West Hartford, but as many of you know, the former chief of Waterbury, Connecticut, with a huge student population, a very successful SRO population, as well as a successful SRO program here in West Hartford. I think the misconception that people have is that we send these officers in and their function is to break up fights and to arrest people and to levy discipline. No. There's a huge selection process that goes by. We pick the right officers. There's interviews that are conducted internally here. There's subsequent interviews that are conducted with particular school, with their command staff, the principal and their teachers, their leadership. We give them a selection of 2 or 3 officers to choose from. And we want that officer that is all about community, it's all about conversation, and it's all about not making an arrest. We want police officers in these schools that when they have to make an arrest, they look at that as a last resort and a failure. And that's the type of people we select for that. I totally disagree with the movement to take SROs out of schools, and I'm going to put this in a little box here. What I mean by this is for those programs, as I just described it. Now, if there's models of SROs who are in schools arresting kids all the time and not doing mediations, I'm not talking about that. They're vital. They break down barriers. And, you know, unfortunately, many times SROs are seen as being separate and distinct from the police department. So they'll say, hey, I love my SRO, but I don't like the police. Well, they're one and the same. I think it's a compliment to the efforts of what our SROs are doing, but I do think that eventually, overall, it should be a holistic community policing philosophy. We're all looked at the same in those regards.
Thank you. Should they be armed?
Without question. Let us not forget about Sandy Hook. Let's not forget about Columbine. Let's not forget about Virginia Tech. And let's not forget about the shootings that are occurring daily in our country now. Without question, they should be armed. Police officers.
This is Sara Raskin, Co-Chair. I'm just going to interrupt real quick, Barry, sorry. So I have two questions about that, or maybe Barry was about to ask. So one is not the SROs necessarily, and I don't know the relationship between the SROs and the security officers who are not police officers. But part of Barry's question that he didn't get to yet was the notion that these officers are perceived by students as punitive disciplinary forces. And I will say, just from my children, when they went through West Hartford Public Schools, frequently brought home stories of the security, I'm not saying the SROs, but the security officers at least, using slurs, being derogatory, behaving in ways to intimidate and frighten students. So my question is twofold. What checks do we have on those behaviors? And secondly, do we have evidence? I mean, you've mentioned school shootings, which of course break all of our hearts, but is there evidence that having an officer in a school is actually effective? And is there evidence that the officers that we have in the West Hartford Public Schools have actually done, what's the measure that we're using to determine that they're useful to have in the schools?
First, let's separate two things. The question that was posed to me was police officers. I can't discuss security. That's not under my realm. That deals with the Board of Ed. That's a discussion to have with them. Two, regarding your children's feelings, that was security officers. I haven't heard anything regarding the police officer. Three, metrics to measure success. How do you measure the crime you stopped? How do you measure the fight you prevented that didn't occur? How do you measure the larceny that didn't happen? I don't have an answer to that. I will tell you anecdotally, based on the conversations that I have in the schools here and my previous job, including the conversation with the superintendent of schools, who was a strong proponent of SROs in the school. They're very positive, very productive, and necessary. You mentioned that, what stats do we have regarding having armed police officers? I can't answer that. But I know one thing. If there's somebody thinking about, God forbid, trying to shoot up a school and they know there's an SRO there, they might think twice. If you do your research on these school shootings, I can't think of one in which there was an actually armed officer inside. There's been a couple where there's some issues there, but there's an armed police officer inside. That's a confrontation that they're not looking for easy victims. So I think we need to be careful regarding that, and I think we need to understand the world that we live in and what's going on right now. And just my opinion, personal and professional, I'm a strong proponent for SROs, especially West Hartford. How we do it's the right way.
Do you have anything else, Sara?
Yeah, I mean, Parkland is a concern, but I don't want to get into that conversation.
Parkland was a coward who should have went inside there and saved some lives. Don't even get me started on Parkland, but that gets me really upset. He can stand outside and tell me you don't know where shots are fired from. You know one way you find out? You get inside a building and say, oh, guess what? They're not here. I'll run to the next building and find out and save some lives where teachers and students are getting slaughtered, and you have a handgun. You can protect lives. That's what I feel about Parkland.
I understand. I hear you. It just makes me wonder,
Well, that's one example you gave me on a situation where it didn't work. Again, you can't provide me with examples of these shootings that were prohibited and stopped because of the police presence. And then we need to be careful with that. I understand your point, but we have to be very, very careful. It's hard to have documentation and statistics on what we stop by our presence.
I hear you. I get that. I guess I would love to maybe look at, I don't know, I'll stop talking, but there must be ways to measure things, right? There must be some kinds of metrics that we could come up with. Because if there's a chance that they're doing harm, we need to know how to outweigh that against the benefit that they're providing. And I don't know, I don't have any good suggestions, but
listen, don't excuse my passion for anger. It's just passion. That Parkland gets under my skin. And we've discussed this here in West Hartford, and I've told my personnel, you need to be careful. 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 You need to be caref Every single one of them, every single roll call when I hire people. If you come close to that, I will fire you. And I'll see you in Weathersfield when you want to fight for your job back. But doggone it, someone has to force me to bring you back. And I would ask you, you had mentioned, I believe, if you had stats that show that the police officer's presence in West Hartford and other towns that have it, or that data, I'd like to see that too. Because I think for every one person who's intimidated, you probably have 10 to 15 students who don't feel that way.
Yeah, I think that's what Sara. Excuse me, it's Adrian Billingsmith again. I think that's what Sara was trying to get at. If we're dealing toward the end of Barry's question, where he was trying to break it down. Sorry, Barry. Where she's talking about anxiety, fear, interference with the educational sphere. What are we doing to combat that image of law enforcement, SROs? We'll just call them police officers because, like you said, you're one and the same. SROs are a part of the law enforcement family, so they're one and the same. But what I think Sara is trying to say is that if we have children who are at a deficit because they automatically have fear, you point out school shootings, this, that, and the other, but every day, and every day, people of color, particularly Black people, are being shot or disciplined in greater numbers, Black and brown people. So I think what she's trying to say is if we have this issue over here, what are you doing? You say that you have the best SROs in West Hartford. I actually believe you. I've talked to multiple people about the SRO thing. I've heard great things about the SROs at Hall and Conard. I guess what she's trying to say is, what are you saying with those SROs because of the current environment to make sure that those children, specific children, feel safe with them around? And children cannot distinguish between their SRO and their security guard because to them, it's just another man with a gun or a man who has some type of authority or a woman who has some type of authority over them who's making them feel intimidated or fearful. Is that correct, Sara?
Well, first I have to see the data to, not being disrespectful, to support your assertion, both of your assertions that that's what's occurring. I think what I'm hearing is you might be getting that from some of the students. So I don't have the statistical data to say that that's true, that these have this anxiety. I can tell you from my 27 years, close to 28 years of police experience when it comes to the SROs, that you mentioned that we're all one and the same. My goal was for us all to be viewed as one and the same. I will disagree, and I do think SROs are looked at differently than regular police officers. So I don't think you have that same anxiety level. I'm willing to recognize that there is a strong possibility that anxiety might occur for regular police officers who are not SROs. I don't think it's the case when it comes to the SROs in the school because they're dealing with them every single day. They have their relationship. They're having conversations. You have to understand, in my opinion, that's shared by most of the people here in the police department, is your SROs are a great intel provider. A student will tell you, hey, little Johnny and little Joe are going to fight after school or meet at the football field. We're going to tell you that XYZ is smoking weed and here's where they're getting it from. That's very important for the health and safety and the wellness of our students. These are the things that we're talking about as far as mediations in which the SROs are very, very helpful. So I do think there's a different view. The goal is to have SROs and the regular patrol officers to be viewed in the same manner, and that's the true essence of community policing. And I will readily admit that we're not there yet, but we're working towards that. And to the other point, Adrian, our SROs are having these conversations in the schools as we go forward. We couldn't have it over the summers for obvious reasons, but as we come back to the schools, we will have those dialogues. So thank you. Very, very good questions.
Sara asking, Co-Chair. So I think you've raised a really great point, which is we could do a survey of students. We could do a survey of teachers. We could ask how they feel on balance, interacting with SROs. SROs could tell us how many times they've broken up, they've gotten intel on fights and those kinds of things. So I think they're probably doing great things that that we should all know about. It would be great. It would be great if I could come back to kids and say, no, look, here's all the great things they do. Thank you very much for that, because that was really helpful to me.
that perhaps my question was pretty much all wrapped up there. And we'll go to Don next.
Well, can I just follow up with one thing you had mentioned? Was as a person of color and the anxiety. First, I'm not sure I mentioned anxiety, but I can relate to the understanding of feeling of getting pulled over and being concerned. I do relate to that. I do understand that. But what I've had to guard myself against is being hypocritical and not painting that blanket against all law enforcement. And it's a daily fight that I have, especially being in law enforcement, being at the head of an agency. It's a tough struggle. It really, really is. When I actually can empathize with protesters, not necessarily the method of some of the protests. I'm all for protests, but I'm just gonna be honest. I'm not in favor of breaking into buildings and starting fires, and I'm just not, and I never will be. But I think it takes away from the message. It takes away from what you're trying to achieve. But I get that duality. I really, really do. And I think that helps me as a leader to lead these officers and to work side by side with them to explain. I think they can respect when I can say it and say, hey, there's no agenda here. I'm telling you how I feel. And I've been there, done it with the next person. This is how I feel. We have to work on that. And so you have to understand maybe sometimes, and I've had this discussion at roll calls, when maybe you pull over a black or brown or a minority, we'll just use black males because that's the hot topic right now. And they might be a little extra nervous or a little concerned. It might not be because they have drugs or a weapon. It might just be because they're afraid based upon the events that have occurred, based upon a lot of portrayals in the media. And you have to recognize where that person has come from to have an understanding of what that response may be. Doesn't mean put your guard down, but at least recognize where it's coming from. And I hope that provides some insight.
It does for me, and I actually can appreciate that duality, and I would think that it would make you a better officer and a better leader as well. Adrian, did you have something? Oh, sorry. Don.
Well, actually, I think you might have teed up my question, Chief. I want to say thank you for joining us here. As I think I told you when I met you at the town hall back when we could actually meet people, I'm the daughter of a police officer, a New York City Transit police officer who served 20 years. He forever was haunted by hesitation, like you described at Parkland. An officer he knew hesitated to shoot, and someone shot and killed New York City's first female police officer, Irma Lazara. It was just this month in 1984, matter of fact. So that was something that he always talked to me about. And when I asked him if I could follow in his footsteps, he told me he'd break both my legs first. I'm a journalist. I was at Sandy Hook. I was there as the moms and dads came out of the firehouse with tears in their eyes, having learned their first graders had been murdered. And I have a little boy who was a first grader then, who's now a freshman in high school. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about and ask you about is, we're white. I mean, we're embarrassingly white. And we know from our neighbors and friends that we are not treated equally in the eyes of the law. Let's not say West Hartford Police, let's just say the law. There are suspicions that are just inherent, going back to my father's work and today across America. As a man of color, as a black man, how can you explain to people what that is about? Because I don't believe these things that people say about police officers. I think, like everything, we're all good, bad, and different. But how can you tell school children either about school resource officers or the officers who might pull them over why it's different and how it's different? And what are you doing about that with your officers and trying to not treat members of our community who are black and brown differently from my kids and me?
Thank you for sharing. First, I'd say for any race, creed, or nationality, no one needs to be embarrassed for whatever they are. You have no reason to be embarrassingly white. There's no reason for that. And I think that's part of the problem is, as we go forward, it seems like, if you're pro something, you're anti something else. That's not the case. There's nothing wrong with Italians saying, I'm happy to be Italian. I'm proud to be an Italian. I'm proud to be Irish. I'm proud to be black. I'm proud to be Asian. Doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think, now to get me on my soapbox a little bit, I think that's part of the problem. You get into the whole Black Lives Matter. Unfortunately, that message isn't coming across. People are thinking it's Black Lives Matter, but the other ones don't. That's not what it's saying. Not so much. I'm talking about the overall message, not the organization. There's some problems with some of the overall message. We're just saying that, hey, we'd like to be recognized, and we're equal to. No better, but definitely no worse. You mentioned, how do you change things? What we're doing tonight is a method for change. The conversations we've had behind closed doors is a method for change. The training that we provide is a method for change. But I'm going to get myself in trouble right now, but that's okay. I'm a big boy, and I'll just get another job. The training is good, but it has to be meaningful, and you got to have leadership that believes in it. This bias training, implicit bias training, and this has been around for a long time. And unfortunately, when you have these training and the leadership, wink, wink, laugh, laugh, doesn't, live by it each and every day, it's not effective. It does not resonate with the officers. And in turn, you're not going to see a change when it comes to the interactions with the public and in the police department. So what we're trying to do here is have these difficult, and they're not easy, trust me, difficult conversations. I have shared some things in 2020 that I've never shared in my entire life, that I've shared publicly. My father has heard some stories that occurred with me when I was a youth that he was unaware of, and he was shocked to hear. I got on my soapbox just a little bit. We have to be careful. I think when a person, especially will deal with a white person, expresses some of their feelings of having a bias or something, of jumping on them and jumping on it, well, you're a racist, and well, hold on. At least this person had the guts to explain and discuss and admit that there might be an issue here. To me, it's an opportunity for discussion. It's an opportunity for education. And that goes both ways. Personally, I have found myself being careful because my radar is up. I have gone to stores, and I'll provide a recent example. I don't drink alcohol, but I do like a non-alcoholic beer. I like the taste. And I went to an establishment, and there was somebody that was sweeping the floor. Oh, by the way, I wasn't dressed like this, nor was I dressed in a suit. I think I had sweatpants on and a hat. And I walked in. It was just funny how this person was all in the back of the store, slowly found their way over to sweep and sweep, so they found themselves to my aisle as I'm going in over there. What do you say? I got a little upset, and I almost said something, and I said, it's not even worth it. This might get bad before it gets better. I go to the front, and I thought again to say something smart, but I didn't. Just to say, hey, tell your buddy, he's a little too obvious. But I didn't. I paid for my beverages. I could have not have paid for them, but I was thirsty and I wanted them. So, so I did. Those are countless stories you have like that. So now you have this feeling when you go to certain places, are you being watched? Is the camera on you? And it's like, you don't even know who I am. You have no idea what I do. And should it even matter? So these discussions are very, very fruitful. They're very important. I think people need to stop being a little sensitive. And if you really want change comes with friction. Sorry, folks. That's just what happens. How you react to that friction. Does it create a fire, or does it spark conversation? Does it spark dialogue? Does it provide an intersection of conflicting ideas to provide a new path, a new avenue for a new direction, a new destination, a new outcome? I'm done preaching.
I'm very grateful. I think all of us, this is Don Ennis speaking, I think all of us want change. It's just we're all different in terms of what that change looks like. And I think that those who want to defund the police and those who are looking to do radical change need to compromise just as much as the police department needs to look at how it does things and how it might do things better. And I thank you again.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you for that. You know, it's tough being in a place of leadership and also being a person of color, and specifically and particularly a Black person with any type of authoritative role, because you have to walk a fine line, and I appreciate that. When you were speaking of leadership and making sure, you know, you're walking the walk, you don't want to do the wink, wink, nod, nod, laugh, laugh when you're going through these implicit bias trainings, and you want to be meaningful and intentional. That kind of leads me into my next point of dealing with leadership. I know the issue that happened with Conard has been resolved over on the HPD side, and the officers have been disciplined per their policies. I wanted to know today, because people still feel as if you haven't just come straight out and I go back to the South. Our sheriffs in the South come out in their cowboy hats and they go, don't step across this line. And I think that's what people are looking for from you, in protecting our citizens, especially our children, especially our high schoolers who were out at dusk, you know, doing what they've been doing for years. I think what people are expecting for you is some type of statement, some type of bold statement where you say, listen, this is my town. Your police officers will not come across our board, into our jurisdiction, and police are people. I understand that it's something that happened between two police officers and they were a married couple, but at the same time, what it did was cause fear and anxiety, once again, with people of color, because where's the line? Where's the boundary for people who might live right on the cusp of Hartford and West Hartford, and how they may be treated based on race, color, or any type of biases? So I just want you to speak to that today and reassure, you know, our community that you are there, you're their chief, and you have their back, and that's it. So if you want to speak on that and kind of make that statement, it would be, if you so wish to, that would be, I think, greatly appreciated by a lot of people.
Okay. First, I don't agree with us not being able to cross lines. So you're not going to hear me state that, because I disagree with that. I will clearly say that what those officers did was wrong, and they were disciplined. It wasn't professional, that was personal. And when you do personal business on company time, you have the problems and the conflict which occurred. And I think what's getting lost in here is Hartford PD has been very beneficial to the town of West Hartford with their technology, their resources, and I'm not trying to sever that relationship. I expected that chief to take a disciplinary action. That chief did. Severe disciplinary action, in my opinion, with heavy suspensions. I think one was 10 or 15 days that the officer took, didn't even grieve. Another officer got suspended, I think, for 5 days or something like that. Think about losing 3 weeks' pay, or 5 weeks' pay. For those who think that's not a big chunk, then God bless you for being a great person who saves and does everything that you're supposed to do. But I think a great majority of people, that'll be very detrimental to them. I will say that in the manner in which those officers conducted themselves, that was wrong, and I do stand with West Hartford and the citizens to protect them against that use of professional availability to take care of a personal problem. Wrong, wrong, wrong. I told the mother of the children that night it was wrong. I told the mother of the children that if that was West Hartford, and I found out that it was West Hartford, that I would take disciplinary action, severe disciplinary action against our police officers before an investigation. You can ask her. That's what I told her. Unfortunately, if people want me to say anything other than that, you're not going to hear it. So I don't agree with it. Now, let's not forget what happened with 9/11. You're like, where are you going, Chief? Well, with 9/11, the FBI and the CIA weren't talking. As a result, they both had information that could have, who knows, hindsight being 2020, but we could have taken more proactive measures to potentially stop what occurred. We will talk to Hartford. We will talk to Farmington. We will talk to Avon and any other Bristol, Southington, because we need to collaborate and share information, and especially with that C4 unit that they have in Hartford, who has helped us with most recently a hit and run, which tracked the vehicle for us up to the person's house to help us solve that case. And where they mess up, we'll make sure to hold them accountable. And I believe Chief Doty did hold those officers accountable.
Thank you. I think that's what everyone was looking for, was that statement of the professional use for personal situations. And I think that's where people just needed that reassurance. I completely agree that you guys should always be in contact with one another, because as you said, the lines are close and you have to be able to support each other in situations. So yes, but I think that your community and your citizens just needed you to say that to them. And I appreciate you for going ahead and saying that today.
You're welcome.
Krishna, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have questions. My name is Krishna, member. I don't have questions to Chief Eddie. Actually, we did so many questions, and members asked so many questions, and he answered very honestly and clearly. And it's a long-waited meeting, and we are so happy to see you in this meeting. And these type of questions and achievements, what you're going to do in the future, and we want to share progress from you in the future too. I appreciate your presence and your answer, your honesty in the answers, and we know that West Hartford is really, we feel secure in living in West Hartford, and that's what the police are doing. And the questions we ask is the concern about the present situations, and don't take that other way around. And these are the concerns raised because of these situations is not going favorable to the people of color. So people have different questions or concerns in their mind. But anyway, there are so many questions we already get answers from you. And thank you, Chief Reddick, and thank you so much for your presence and these answers and all your clarifications. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you for those comments. And, West Hartford, if I can just talk for, I don't know how much time, we were running out of time. Coming from the outside and in, you need to understand the reputation that West Hartford has from the outside. When I was a chief in Waterbury, actually I think I was a sergeant or a lieutenant way back when, we sent our bike officers to West Hartford to get trained because they had the best training out there. We sent officers to the FTO program because you guys had, I'm saying you guys going back, had the best training out there. West Hartford is known statewide for being cutting edge. West Hartford is known statewide for being trendsetters, for being very professional. Does that mean we're perfect? Oh, no. And trust me, since I've been here, we've uncovered some things. We need to fix some things and have corrected some things. But the one thing I've never doubted at all, I know why I was brought in. There was a need. The dedication and the commitment and the willingness to sacrifice personal accolades for the overall good for the community, second to none. Second to none. So you need to take solace in that, have an appreciation for that. We're not above reproach. We understand that, which is the purpose of this evening. And some people ask for updates, but we provide updates at our public safety meeting. Every month we provide updates. We're very willing to take on the tough questions, provide answers when we can, and be open and transparent. We can agree to disagree on some things, but I think overall we all will agree what we need to do going forward, and no one can doubt the commitment for our officers to make that sacrifice for their community. And if they don't do it, they don't belong here. They don't belong here. If any of you have attended one of our swearing-in ceremonies with our police officers, I tell it to the family, to town council, or anybody else who's in the audience. If our officers, I'm not saying recklessly, if our officers are not willing to put their life on the line for somebody in the public, whether they like them or not, then they don't need to have the badge. You might as well turn it in because you're not worthy to wear it.
Sarah Aspen, Coach, I thank you for that very much, Chief. And I think, probably bar none, we chose to live in West Hartford for a lot of reasons, but one of them being that the balance of safety and dignity exist here. And so I think we're all really grateful and aware of that. And I don't want to leave you with the impression that we're not. The last thing that we just wanted to reach out about was the notion of whether, and this was actually one of the things we were going to ask you a year ago when we were originally looking to meet, was to ask you whether it's possible. I know that at one time we had gotten data on traffic stops by race, and I think we stopped getting it because West Hartford got good at it, so we were no longer on the list of towns in which it was a problem. It stopped being a problem. The traffic stops by race stopped looking like there was any bias to them, so we stopped getting the reports. But we were just wondering if it's possible to get, we have a list of things that we would be interested, use of force by race, interaction with youth by race, what happens with disciplinary policies in the schools, how often are the kids in the schools having to be arrested or disciplined by the SROs by race. So I don't know what the easiest, best way to ask you, is it possible to get any of that data on an annual basis to this body? If it is, what's the best route? If it's not possible, let me know.
Yeah, there were some things, again, not being perfect, which we weren't really tracking in the past, and we really started using our technology, our software, our next-gen system, Power BI, to provide that information, the traffic stop data. I just want to make a slight correction that the last time West Hartford was on with the CCSU report, the racial profiling, there was no finding of racial profiling. There was a disparity. CCSU did come in, have conversations, and there were explanations for some of the disparity as regarding the traffic stops maybe being a little bit out of whack with the population. Understand, our brother and sister town in Hartford is 70% minority. There's a lot of the transiency that comes over here. We have the mall, which is a huge magnet for people coming here. And the great thing about West Hartford is it's a destination place for a lot of people of race, creed, and nationality. So although our minority population numbers town-wide not be high, the transiency of that is a lot higher to increase our minority numbers. Regarding to your specific question is yes for some of that data, and that data will be provided at the public safety meetings and the annual reports. We can post online, have no problem with that, and provide that data to you on an annual basis.
Thank you. Barry, did you have more?
The thing is, going back to the review board and how that's, I know it's kind of late in the game there, but I just want to reiterate the commission's desire to be a part of that, if at all possible. I know I had spoken, not to you, but to another individual about our involvement. And I despite the lateness, I would invite, we would very much like to be part of the process.
Understood. I will have that information, discussion with the town manager and the mayor, and we go from there. I don't see it being a major issue.
I appreciate that. And again, I think each one of us, appreciates your time, coming here and being as honest as you have been. And I thank you very much for doing so.
Thank you. If I can just qualify my previous comment, I don't think it would be good functionally for the entire board to be part of it. I just think as an operational component of that. So if there was a few representatives, and I can't speak for the mayor or the town manager, so I don't think having a ton of people with this is beneficial. I think a smaller working group to bring back recommendations is prudent and efficient.
Understood. Thank you. Sara, anybody else have anything? All right.
No, thank you so much, Chief Reddick. We appreciate your time. Thank you for your honesty and candor. Thank you for being here for your community in both ways, both communities, Black community and the West Hartford community as a whole. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I think I'll phrase it this way: the West Hartford community, and understanding the different groups that make up the West Hartford community, and being able to address each one of your needs specifically. So I understand that's what you meant by that. So I'm in agreement. Thank you.
I'll add my thanks too. As a transgender woman living in a progressive town in a blue state, I still today face hate, and I would just ask that in closing, you keep in mind the most marginalized members of our community, trans women of color, and the people of the LGBT community who look to you for help and support. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Shall we let the chief off the hook now? Okay.
Thank you all for your time, and again, we're willing to come back again, and we appreciate the collaboration, the opportunity to work together for change. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief.
We do too. Thank you.
Thank you.
I forgot to say this is Don Ennis, so this is Don Ennis. That was great.
All right, and thank you to Adrian and Barry for setting it up, and I'm glad we finally got to meet. Next up on our list of guests is Tom Moore, the superintendent. He asked for a little time for school to start before we got him on the hot seat, which
We told him Monday, right?
I just so folks know that that's what's next. All right, Barry, do you want to adjourn, or do we have other things we should?
Is there other new business that Dawn is asking that we leave? She must be hungry or something.
Can I go? Just go.
Oh,
Okay.
Adrian, you mute.
Hey, can you hear me? So
There you
let's
are.
review this. We're going to talk about celebration of Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Yes.
To be pre-recorded. Pramod is going to go and ask about
Park Road Parade.
Park Road Parade. I'm going to, if you guys send me the information for MLK, I'm going to get them on the phone. And I think that's it. I just wanted to go over that again.
If you guys were going to ask for somebody to volunteer to be secretary, I hereby volunteer.
Wonderful! That's fantastic.
Because the kids they're still clamoring for dinner, so I've got to go. So
Okay, thank you, Dawn.
Having volunteered.
Barry Walters, co-chair. Thank you, Dawn. I do want to just give Brian
yeah, sure.
the courtesy of
saying absolutely.
Yeah, because I don't want to just say you're out. I do.
It's perfectly fine. Don't understand.
I think it's fair to talk to him first.
Yes.
So
I stand and wait.
okay.
And a motion to adjourn.
I second that emotion. Oh, motion, not emotion. I second the emotion too. All right.
You have to sing it if that's what it's going to be.
No.
You don't want me singing it, don't Anna saying no.
No, me either. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.